Good evening, everyone. We are back. We're back to doing a live video tonight. Last week, The Rescuers was a pre-recorded one, but we're back to normal this week with number 24, The Fox and the Hound. This was one that I watched a lot growing up. This was really fun to go back to today. I watched it this morning and was hit with a whole bunch of PTSD and emotional feelings. So we're going to go into it today. We're going to talk about this film. We're going to talk about if it still holds up, if it's one of our favourites, and everything in between. We've already got a comment from Brian Emery. He's always first out the gate every single time. I don't know if he commented last week. I didn't get his one on The Rescuers. So if you're watching right now, Brian, let me know what you think of The Rescuers from last week. But pertaining to The Fox and the Hound, he says, love The Fox and the Hound. It's a good movie. And I quite agree. We've got Kurt the Gamer, who says, I haven't seen The Fox and the Hound in years. I was exactly the same until this morning. It's weird how things come flooding back to you. But yeah, number 24. We're getting through them. We're getting there. Like, thinking back, like, we've been doing this shit for over 24 weeks. It's going pretty quick. We're going to get into, like, the Renaissance in, like, a month's time, which is going to be really fun. But, yeah, anyway, how are you doing tonight? Fox and the Hound. Talk to me about it.
What does Renaissance mean?
It's like a rejuvenation, I guess, isn't it? It's like where things improve, I guess.
So if you have, let's say you have two kids and they're little shits, and then 4 years later you have two more, but they're wicked. Is that like your Renaissance
Bit of
kids?
a Renaissance, I guess so.
Yeah. Would it work? Is it the same? I don't know.
Does a certain amount of time have to go past before it's the Disney Renaissance?
I don't know. That's a good point. If anyone knows, comment that. Tell us what is the technical term. But yeah, it was. I haven't watched it since fucking I don't know when. I honestly do not know. I don't remember the first time I watched it. It was a long time ago. Yeah, I watched it, 50, 40 times, whatever it is that you've watched it. I watched it a couple of times. The biggest thing I remember, don't ask me why, is when they're in the when there's the first dog, that where it's like be wary of his teeth kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember that scene perfectly, but I remember the log. I don't know why, but it's the log. Always remember that log that he's in. That is the biggest thing for me, and I don't ask me why.
Are you talking about the barrel that he's sleeping in? Did you say?
Yeah, like the thing that like he's inside, and then he go in like the little thing he's in. That's the thing I remember, and I do not know why, but it's that, not just the scene, but the thing he's in. I just remember that. If you show me that, I go, Fox and Hound. Don't know why.
It's weird how like certain flashes come back to you throughout this film, and it was more or less every single moment was going past. It was all coming back to me. Kurt has also mentioned saying this is very loosely based on a book. Yep, that's true. It was a 1967 novel by Daniel P. Mannix. Again, a book I've never read. He said it's very loosely based on it, which doesn't surprise me, being a Disney adaptation. I've never read the book. I don't know what the changes are. I know a big pivotal moment from the book that was going to feature in this film that they changed last minute, which is probably my biggest negative about the film, which I'll get into later when we get into the plot of it more. But yeah, the rights for the film were pretty much picked up there and then, I think, in the 60s, but it wasn't, they didn't start putting it in production until a decade after that, around the late 70s, 1977, I think it was. But this was 1981, so we're into a new decade with this one. But yeah, every single scene was going past, even from the opening, the how it's kind of out of focus, and you can see these like twinkling lights, and it kind of pushes through a spider web. And then you get the really intense opening scene with Todd's mum trying to save the baby. That all came back to me, and PTSD was setting in. And it was intense as well. Like, the soundtrack was just going for it. And it just felt like a much more mature take. And before we went live, you mentioned it, and I wanted to bring this up as well. Especially watching these in sequence really helps, because you can kind of keep in your mind what's come before, how the company's developed. Very, very reminiscent of Bambi. All the way through this, sort of like man versus nature, and especially the whole opening with the mom and being shot out in the distance as well, where you don't see it but you hear that gunshot and you know exactly what's happened. Very, very similar, I found. And especially sort of like the second act as well, which I think this film does much better than Bambi does, because we always talk about, you remember the first bit of Bambi where, you know, he's young and it's all the cutesy shit, but then you get into the second half of it and it's kind of a bit of a blur. There are some cool sequences when he's an adult, like during the stag fight that he has, but you don't really remember it all that much. Whereas this film, I think it nails both the beginning when they're younger and sort of playing together, and especially the adult stuff. That's where sort of like the real drama kicks in. And you've got the bit with like Vixie and Todd, and it's kind of reminiscent of Bambi and what's the name of the female deer in that film? I always forget. Yeah, I forgot, but it's very reminiscent of that. I agree.
Also, what's his name? Amos looks a little bit like Grandpa Joe.
Well, yeah. I only found out this today. He, for as long as I can remember, the character always had a really recognizable voice to me, and I could never place it. And you know, I could have checked Wikipedia any number of years ago, and for some reason I haven't. Today was the day, and I was like, huh, it's Grandpa Joe.
Yeah.
Who is also, he's the main villain of this film, and arguably also the main villain of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as well.
Interesting. Why?
He faked being an invalid in bed, and as soon as he gets the golden ticket, he jumps. Poor Charlie Bucket's mum has been slaving away, probably working about 4 jobs a day on her own, keeping these old fucks in this bed. And this guy just gets up and starts dancing. He endorses the fizzy lifting drinks. He's like, yeah, Charlie, drink up the fizzy lifting drinks. He's very self-centered. He's only fussed about himself and what he gets out of the deal. He congratulates Charlie on potentially thieving food. He's a son of a bitch. He really is.
Well, the way my brain went was, you ever seen Meat Factory?
Meat Factory.
Yeah, so there's a YouTube channel, and it's just basically there's a Charlie in the Chocolate Factory one, and you've got Willy Wonka leading Charlie through the chocolate factory. He starts getting a little bit more creepy, a little bit perverted. He takes his shirt off, and then Charlie's like, "Where's Grandpa Joe?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about him." And he walks on, and you see him in the dark, and he looks over at Charlie. And he's literally just counting money, and then he just ignores him. So he's like been paid off, so that he's sold to Willy Wonka as like a child slave.
Oh no!
And that's where my brain went. I went, "Hang on, yeah, here's a villain." Child slavery, woo.
Kurt the Gamer, just going back to Fox and the Hound, he's talking about the book. He said that it's out of print. That's especially considering the Disney movie probably put this book on the map. Definitely gave it that sense of popularity, I'd say, and cult following. Strange that it's not in print anymore. It has to be. You've got to be able to get a copy of this, surely. I don't know. I'll have to check that. I'd be interested to actually read through the plot in a second. Probably after we've done this review. Probably should have done it before, just to see what the differences are. But it might be a book that I might read at some point, definitely. Kurt the Gamer says, I haven't read it either. It's still available on the Internet Archive borrow system, so I may read it soon. And then he says...
what year did it come out?
The book, 1967.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if it was like old public domain, but no.
Not just yet. Slowly but surely, though, as the years go by, they are building that Disney horror franchise, aren't they? We've got a Donald Duck one on the way, a Mickey Mouse one, a Bambi one as well is happening, which looks really fun. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they released a trailer. I think it's a legit trailer. A Bambi horror film. It looks... The trailer's pretty fun, but it'll probably be shite. But this film's pretty significant in a lot of ways because it kind of shows a shift in the behind the scenes of all the animators in the Disney Animation Studios, in the productions. You have this almost passing of the torch with this film. It was in production for a long time. I think it was in production for about 4 years. It was actually delayed by 6 months from when they initially said the release date was going to be, because of kind of dissension in the ranks of you've got like the old guard and the new guard coming in. So it's pretty big for that. And also it's the last Disney film in which any of the remaining members of what Disney called his 9 old men, his original animators from back in the day, which included Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. It was the last Disney film that they worked on. They worked on early production, got all of their animation done, and then took early retirement. But it's the last time that they worked on a Disney film, so it is very much a passing of the torch. But it also was ushering in that new age of new up and coming directors and animators and creative minds, including but not limited to Tim Burton from this film, Brad Bird, who, you know, Incredibles and Iron Giant, John Lasseter, sorry, and a lot of people will eventually see in the Disney Renaissance. Names I'm sure will be coming up again, like John Musker and Ron Clement, certainly. Henry Selick as well, director of Nightmare Before Christmas. So a lot of new blood was brought on board with this movie, and a whole lot of bickering behind the scenes. But yeah, I guess before we dive into all that, then I guess we can sort of talk initial opinions on this movie then. So any early memories you have of this film, when you may have first watched it? Was it one that you watched a lot? And have your opinions changed on it after today?
I didn't watch it a lot. My opinion today is it's just as sad. I never watched it a lot. I watched it maybe once or twice. I just remember it being sad. The thing is, I've never watched Old Yeller. I've never watched that, and that's a movie that people, you know, obviously everyone knows it's about a dog and, you know, rabies, all that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be that whole like, oh, it's a sad movie about a dog. This is my sad movie with involving a dog. To me, this is that whole like, oh, like if someone talks about it, I'm like, don't lower the tone. You know what I mean? And that's how this whole vibe is going. We're going Snow White, all this kind of stuff together, and you're suddenly like, yeah, oh, like that's what it is. It's like you've lowered the tone, and you know the thing where they obviously drive away with Aunt Mabel, who I'd say looks like Aunt Mabel, who is not called Aunt Mabel, but you know who Aunt Mabel is, right? With the plane and the polka dots.
She is called Widow Tweed, apparently.
Is that her name? I
Widow
don't, but
Tweed?
you know who Aunt Mabel is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with the plane and the come fly with me. Well, not come fly with me. That's the wrong one. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Come outside, wasn't it? Is that what you're talking about?
That's it. Come outside, come fly with me is very. But the whole time I was watching it again, all I could think was Aunt Mabel. But the point is, the whole where where they drive away and everything, it's just like a sad kind of like we were friends, and it's like, but we can't be, and it's like, it's a very Romeo and Juliet kind of. Obviously it's not like a love story, but different worlds too, that they can't be together, they can't be friends sort of thing. It's very that kind of vibe, which is, I think that vibe has been used a lot, really, hasn't it? If you really think about it in movies and books and all that, but it's a very good vibe and it works very well, and it's different in the sense of it's not Romeo and Juliet, it's not exactly the same, but that whole two different worlds, are brought together, but then nature says they can't be together, and it's really sad. When you think about it, and I think the sad thing is as well, it's very realistic in terms of that kind of world. So you might think, I don't know, let's give an example. Like it could be many years ago. You've got like a princess and like Aladdin. You know what I mean? Someone that wants to be with someone from a completely different world. Like you got Aladdin, street rat sort of thing, but literally society says no, and it just can't happen. You know what I mean? It's that kind of vibe, and I think that's the sad thing about it.
Yeah, I think it's a really mature film, actually, and with how it handles its themes, I think it does it exceptionally well. The whole theme of like prejudice, as you said, and sort of like that childhood innocence, which sadly kind of gets lost and through outside influence can get manipulated and changed as we get older, and friendship and things like that. And it's all of those themes, and I don't think they're done in a ham-fisted way at all. I think they're done in a very mature way, and I'm guessing all of those things are straight from the book and they've adapted very well. It's a Disney film, so of course they add some like cutesy comic relief shit into the film as well, which I used to love as a kid. Watching it now, I'm like, this is kind of pointless. Why we cut into this where you've got the I guess like the sparrow and the woodpecker chasing after the caterpillar. It's fine, but it's like, can we just get back to it? It feels like an interlude. It feels like that's just sort of like breaking up the movie a little bit, and you get that with other films as well. Probably my favorite Disney film, which we'll get to in a number of weeks' time, is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Very mature film, probably the maturest Disney film in terms of its themes and its content. But even that film, you have like the gargoyles doing cutesy shit in the film, and I've always got to be mindful of that. Like, this is a Disney film, it's intended for kids, but you do wonder, maybe if you did remove that and you focused a little bit more, you could genuinely have like a very, very mature take on the film. Case in point, one of the biggest plot points of the book, and was initially in the story concept for this as well. And watching it again today, you can absolutely see where it was kind of changed at the 11th hour. Was Chief, the old hunting dog, who gets hit by the train. Now, in that scene in the book, Chief dies, and Chief, like the book in this film, was going to die at that scene. And that was going to be the inciting incident for Copper to hate Todd and want to get his revenge and have that sort of like, bloodlust to go after and hunt Todd. And I think it's a very important character moment, and I think that is the shift in the narrative, because we like Chief, and I think he's brilliantly voiced again by Pat Buttram. He's voiced a bunch of characters before this point. And I think that was really necessary, and I think it was actually the director. I want to say it was, oh god, what was his name? Reitherman, Wolfgang Reitherman, who bowed out of directing this, I think, halfway through. He pushed to not have any characters die. He says, it's a Disney film, we haven't killed any main characters off, and we sure as hell aren't going to do that now. I'm pretty sure he said that. I'll double check in a second. And what we get is this just like really awkward scene where it's, they go back in and they animate his eyes opening after he's been hit with a train, so he's fine, and then you get like a bit of a wacky moment with his leg in a cast. But other than that, like, Chief isn't in really the rest of the movie until the final shot. And I just think that this film would have been so much better had they have just gone with that. And saying that, we haven't killed any sort of like main Disney characters off. Bambi's mom? Hello? Back at Disney Classic number 5? Like, we've killed Disney characters off before.
The evil queen.
The evil, yeah, like, it's been done, and later on, thankfully we'll get stuff like Mufasa, which is a huge moment for The Lion King, and some other films. But, yeah, I just think they really could have gone further with the drama, and I feel like they go there with some aspects. It is a maturer story, and I like the themes in it, but I feel like they could have gone a lot heavier with it. You know how, like, we always bring this up, I'm going to bring it up again, but again, similar themes in this film too. There's a Don Bluth link here as well, I'll talk about him in a second, but Land Before Time, that kind of has that unlikely group of people thrown together, that long necks aren't meant to mix with 3 horns and all of that stuff.
To be fair, Land Before Time is quite dark in the movie and outside the movie.
Yeah.
For things we won't mention specifically in this video.
I don't know. Have we mentioned those before? I don't think we mentioned.
I don't know. I feel like there was someone that got shot at like 3 years old, and I think something happened. It's quite dark.
Oh no!
I could be wrong. I don't know. But that's why we're here.
Yeah. But yeah, this one was an absolute pleasure to go back to today. I watched this one a whole lot back in the day, and it was one that actually used to really scare me. The introduction was always really intense. I always remember, I've got like such a sense memory of it. It's literally the first shot in the film, that really slow build up through the spider web, and then you just see the silhouette of the mom fox with a cub in her mouth, like from like a far away shot. That image of the silhouette there as she's running away is like burned into my mind.
Do you know what? Speaking of silhouettes and stuff, one of the things that stands out for me is, and I think this is a really good shot. So I'm going to call her Aunt Mabel again because she's Aunt Mabel to me, but you know the lady. But when she drops off, what's the fox's name again? Why do I forget the fox's name? Todd. Yeah, there you go. I keep getting confused with Copper. I don't know why, but anyway, yeah, she takes him away anyway, and when she leaves him, and then she drives away. And it's in color, but as soon as she gets driving away, she's suddenly in black and white. I do like that. It kind of shows the whole like she's gone, like she's no longer in your world kind of thing. And I think that's really, really cool. That whole that she turns into this black and white sort of silhouette and she's disappeared.
And that's a huge moment as well. A lot of people cite that because I do think this has a cult following. When you talk about like saddest Disney moments, a lot of people go to Mufasa's death. Some people bring up the baby mine scene from Dumbo. Of course, you've got Bambi, but I've heard a few people actually mention the bit where she leaves Todd in the game preserve, and I do think it's a really nice moment. Watching it again now, I think it still works. Like I think it still hits the emotional beats. but you kind of get this spoken poem going all through her internal monologue, like, I remember the good times and the rainy days and when you'd look at me with those eyes and things like that. And I do think the scene would be stronger if it was just the music and just glances between the two of them. It feels very spelled out in that scene. And it kind of works with the song, and you get a bit of a chorus that comes in towards the end. But I do think I am curious how that scene would go over emotionally if they just reined it back in and you just had the music playing out with those two side by side, looking at each other, smiling, her kind of welling up, and then this sadness in her face. I think that would have worked a lot better, maybe. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Christopher Reeve, Superman the movie from 1978. The original Superman movie.
How have I not seen? How have I not seen?
I don't know.
Movie?
Some people haven't. A lot of people haven't. I was quite late to it as well. But you've got the flight sequence, like one of the most memorable scenes from that film. Absolutely one of cinematic history's best scenes as far as I'm concerned.
Great film.
But
one
you
of the
have Lois Lane reciting this. Can you read my mind? Do you know how you make me feel? And it goes on for like minutes of her verbalizing everything she's feeling. I'm like, just let the soundtrack go. Just let it play out. And I think sometimes less is more in some scenes like that. But that's a nitpick, but it is a very striking scene.
I think there's a lot of things that do that. I think I can name many examples of things that, just because I think the way directors and stuff do it is they think we want to make it sad, and that's their goal. And it's like, I get what you're doing, but there's a way, there's prolonging it too much. It's like, if a character dies, I mean, me and you have said this before, when a character dies, it's like, kill them off. That's it. We don't need them to come back. We don't need any of this drama. We don't need any of that. And it's like, there was one of the Final Fantasy games did it, and it really pissed me off. They killed off a character, and I was like, okay, cool, awesome, they're dead. And then they prolonged it, and they did this whole, when you do like the whole spiritual, they're kind of talking to you, and it's kind of in the character's head, because they wanted to do this big send-off, and there's this whole like big goodbye at the end, and you're like, it's like in their head, and they wanted to make it sad. And I was like, no, that just made it not sad, because there was no loss. It was just big closure. And it's like, I'm sorry, but if someone gets stabbed in front of you, there is no closure, and that's the point. And it just, what I mean? It's the same thing. And I think sometimes you do just, it's easy to, I think, when you're creating something, to lose sight of that, because you want to drag it on, and you want to, I mean, how many times have you told me a story or vice versa, and we've kind of repeated what we're saying just because we want to make it's impactful, we want to make a point of how good it is, and it's like, realistically, you don't need to go on that much. And it's the same thing with movies, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the only scene that really comes to mind for me with that one, where I think they could have just reined it back a little bit. So my biggest problem with the movie is Chief. It is keeping him alive, because to what end? To what purpose? It lessens the blow because, it's a Disney film, we can't kill anyone off, but functionally in the plot, Chief does absolutely nothing after that point, and because you could tell that was the original intention. And it kind of goes to the leadership behind this film. So, as I say, Wolfgang Reitherman, director of the whole string of previous Disney films that we've talked about. He was the original director, and the co-director on the project was Art Stevens, and there was basically a power struggle between the two. Again, it's kind of like the old ways and the new ways coming in. There was a mediator, co-producer between the two of them, Ron Miller, who kept like siding with Stevens. And eventually, I think Reitherman just bowed out. Reitherman's decisions on this film were very questionable, I would say. But Reitherman was pushing back against the new animators that were coming in. He didn't trust any of the new ones that were coming in. So it seems like he was very much tethered to the old ways kind of thing. And the company was changing, and you've either got to change with it or you're out. And he was very much out. For example, a very questionable decision he had was Reitherman felt the second act was very weak. It lacked a strong second act. So his method for correcting this, according to him, was going to be a musical sequence that was going to be added in right when Todd gets dropped in the game preserve. There were going to be two cranes that were flying over, one of which was going to be voiced by the guy who did Baloo, Little John, and Thomas O'Malley, Phil Harris. And they were going to sing a song, apparently, a silly song called Scooby Dooby Dooby Doo, Let Your Body Turn to Goo. That's apparently...
I do think a song, like a sing song, it would just ruin the tone.
Killed it. Yeah,
It,
absolutely. It wouldn't have
yeah,
fit. Absolutely
yeah.
wouldn't have fit. And apparently, like, one of the voice actors of the Cranes, they'd recorded like a bunch of voice tracks. It was even being storyboarded, and the studio personnel were like, absolutely fucking not. Like, this can't be in the movie. And even Art Stevens, who was the co-director, apparently quoted said, "We can't let that sequence in the movie. It's totally out of place." And eventually Reitherman, who I think was backing the idea for the song initially, apparently walked into his office, slumped in a chair, and said, quote, "I don't know, Art, maybe this is a young man's medium." So it felt like he was very much out of touch. You could imagine something like that being in a film like Sword in the Stone or something, where like a Jungle Book, where like a random animal shows up. I mean, they were going to have that rhino, weren't they? Rocky the Rhino, that was going to show up for like a random musical number. So you could imagine it in something like that, but with this film, with it being a much maturer take, especially at that point in the film as well. You've just gone through this whole like emotional upheaval of Todd being left in the forest by himself to fend for himself. He's been raised in captivity all of his life, and now he's out in the wild. He doesn't know what to do. And then you've got a silly song that comes in. Like, what the fuck's that doing in there, you know?
Do you know the similarities I find with this? Final Fantasy 3. Similar.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar in that thrown into the wild, very different. Like, because foxes are meant to be in the wild. It's the same in Final Fantasy 3. Bears are meant to be in the wild, but at the same time, it's like they're not used to it. It's very different, very weird, and big similarities, which is really cool. And I say when we do these movies together, like you said, seeing different similarities with Bambi, you see similarities with so many things, and I think it's great. It's what makes them, if that makes sense. Like, there's always kind of going to be another one. Like, realistically, when you think about it, like Snow White, there was another Snow White. I mean, you got a Cinderella, you got something like that. Bambi, there was another Bambi. You get Fox and the Hound. You've got to think. And the next, I don't know, Winnie the Pooh. What I mean, we haven't had something like that in a while, but there's always something like the next one, which I think is really cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. One of the big names as well who left. I mean, as I say, it wasn't just directors who dropped out of this thing. Even like a whole host of the animators left as well, which is what resulted in this film getting pushed back. I mentioned him last week, but Don Bluth, who would go on to make things, as I mentioned, like The Secret of Nim, American Tail, Anastasia, things like that. He was working on this movie. The main sequence that he worked on, and I was actually kind of looking out for it, and I could kind of tell the way, is it Annabelle the cow? When old, what is it? What did you call her? What did you call the old lady in this?
Aunt Mabel.
Aunt Mabel, yeah. When she's milking the cow, and then everything kicks off and the milk gets kicked over. The cow really looked like something Don Bluth would draw. Like the face, the way it was animated, and I was like, I wonder if he worked on that. Apparently, that was
of the
his main
animation.
sequence.
Well, speaking of the animation, though, it's so much better than the others that we've gotten recently as well, isn't it?
Really good, yeah.
Because we were even saying before, I think the next time we really treated to something was like Little Mermaid, but I think this is a big stepping point.
Oh, it's huge, yeah. It's that kind of, how they always keep going back to Bambi again. They keep saying that the animals were animated in a more realistic way, mature way. When you have like Todd and Copper and everything, and they're cartoony characters, but when they face off against each other, when like Todd like snaps into attack mode, and he's like hackles are up and he's like snarling and his eyes are like piercing red, and you've got Copper when they're in the foxhole and he's like digging, he's like going fucking like rabid to try and get them. It's intense, man. It's like, oh shit, like this ain't your cutesy anthropomorphic fox from Robin Hood. This is real shit. And especially the bear at the end. Oh my god, that sequence with the bear, that traumatized me as a kid, because it's kind of a jump scare a little bit. The way it builds up, that they're on the waterfall and it's all quiet, then the soundtrack kind of gets a little bit creepy, like something's coming, you don't know what it is, and then you have the reaction shot of Copper and Amos Slade, where he just looks up and the shadow looms over him, and then this giant demon bear with red eyes, this giant black bear shows up, and he just starts wrecking people's lives, and it's intense, and his foot gets caught in the trap. I was terrified as a kid of this bear, which is weird because bears are my favorite animals, and they always were. But this was intense. This ain't your Bongo the bear from Fun and Fancy Free. This ain't your Baloo or Little John that we've seen in the previous Disney films. This is some real shit. This is like, you're out in the wilderness hunting and a bear shows up. You're fucked. You are done. And
you just run downhill.
Well, they try that. It doesn't work in the movie. But this thing is huge. It's lumbering. It's well animated. I love when like Todd jumps on its back and it's like biting. It's like tugging at the fur, and the way that the fur's animated and everything, the way it moves. And then you get like the intense final sequence where they're on the waterfall and the log snaps. It's a great ending to the film. It's like a really good, strong third act. I don't know if the bear is from the book or if this was a creation purely for the film. But it is the inciting incident that brings that trust together between man, Todd and Copper essentially at the end. But it was one of those sequences where I'd always be apprehensive of watching it when I was a kid, because it was really scary to me. I loved it and I thought it was action packed, but I'd have to kind of psych myself up mentally for it, to the point where I watched it so many times I'd have to memorize and pinpoint the moment when the bear shows up on screen, almost counting the seconds, like, okay, it's going to show up in 3, 2, 1, just to prepare myself for that moment. And it kind of all came back to me today a little bit, the childhood trauma. It always does with that kind of stuff, but it's a great sequence. I think it's a really strong final act to the film with all that. Part of me kind of wishes the final shot was when they all go their separate ways, where Amos Slade's like, come on, Copper, let's go home. And you have Todd and Copper, and they kind of exchange one last look at each other, and they go their separate ways, and then they stop, don't they? And they do a double take and then walk off. If that had been the final shot of the movie, I think that would have been perfect. But you get a bit of tie up. You get Amos Slade getting his leg nursed back to health. You get another shot of Chief. You get the woodpecker with the butterfly, and it kind of ties everything up. But yeah, I don't know. That'd be another change I'd probably make. But
yeah. I mean, I think there's not many changes I'd make, though. I kind of agree, but I think a lot of it is done very, very well. I don't think there's a lot of things I'd change. I do like. I think there's a lot of it that just because it's very Disney, because it's very Disney. There's a lot. It's dark, and yes, it's one of those things, where you think, if you commit to the dark and you go, let's go full that route, would it be as Disney? That's what you got to think. And I think a good example of that is Black Cauldron, which is obviously, one of our next ones. That committed to dark, but it was very Disney because it was very Kingdom Hearts. You've got the Final Fantasy element, which is serious, which is dark, but have you this is a weird example, but did you ever see the Family Guy and Simpsons crossover?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so weird example in the sense of Family Guy is very adult humor, Simpsons is very kind of family friendly. Those two worlds are put together, and they're put together very well because Family Guy, that part, they're the ones that do the swear and all that. Simpsons don't participate in that, but they still work well together. It's that kind of like Black Cauldron does that very well, whereas like the Final Fantasy, they're a bit more serious, but because they're around the Disney characters, they don't act too much like that. And I think that mixture goes very well, and it's kind of like this. It's got, I think, the right mixture to me. I don't know if that makes sense. That I kind of went on a tangent, but you get what I mean, where it makes sense to have that. And I personally, I don't think there's really much I'd change because I do think it keeps it as a Disney movie. Otherwise, it would be a bit too like, what are we watching? Is this a kid? I mean, obviously it'd be a kids movie, but it's one of them where, like you say, we've kind of, like I said, we've kind of gone on that tangent of like, okay, this has gone a bit darker, and then we kind of liven ourselves back up. Whereas otherwise, it would be like, what's this? What the hell have we just? You know what I mean? Especially coming from like Winnie the Pooh from a couple of weeks before.
And I think going back to the one that I compared it to, The Land Before Time, that was going to be even darker. that was going to be even more depressing. And I think
Well,
they
it
screened
was
it
when
to
Ducky died. Continue.
they screened it to like the execs, and they said, this is going to traumatize kids. You got to do something about this. So I think they reined back on some of the violence when Sharptooth is attacking Littlefoot's mom. I think it was going to be a lot more gory, a lot more graphic. You were going to see the wounds during the fight. And that character, what's his name? Rooter, I think his name is, like the old codger dinosaur who kind of has that heart-to-heart with Littlefoot after his mom dies and kind of says, like, you know, she's always going to be with you and things like that. That was added in after the fact because they said, we need a scene, a character to kind of, you know, the kids watching at home to just help them, tell them it's going to be okay. We need that scene, so they added that scene in after the fact. So yeah, I think you can go so far in the opposite direction, which watching it as an adult, we'd probably appreciate a lot more that they're willing to just go as dark as they want or as to go as mature as they want to.
Think
But
about
then
it,
you
like,
have to keep remembering that this is meant for kids, and you know, kids do need that levity and do need that break and maybe need that comic relief in there. And I think it can be done well, and I think it can be done poorly. And as we go through the Disney films, there are examples of both of those extremes. But
it's
yeah,
like Hunchback of Notre Dame. That gets quite dark, and you know, the
very
falling
dark.
into the flames and everything. That gets very dark. But was that the last kind of dark Disney movie? Because have we had any dark ones since?
That's a good point. In
Like,
terms of
things
like
have
really
happened.
mature.
Yeah, because not many have dealt with proper mature themes like that for a while.
I don't think Disney's ever gone to that same place that they have for Hunchback. No,
Exactly. And
no.
you know, it'd be good if they did, but again, we'll come on to this more when we get closer to that. But Disney's gotten a bit more wet like the world.
Yeah.
And do you know what I think would be good? And this is just me. This is just me. But Hunchback of Notre Dame deals with the whole, you know, gypsies, all that sort of stuff. Now, would that be made today?
No,
Probably not. The world's too wet for it.
absolutely not.
Do you know what would be a good thing if Disney did? Disney will never do it, but it went against gypsies. Imagine they did the same thing. Someone wanted to kill all the trans people. Imagine that. Imagine they went like full blown that. The point is, they would never do it. But if this was the 90s, they might take that kind of risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they wouldn't necessarily say the words kill trans people, but they would do something where they've got someone against that, and they might take those little risks. Whereas now, they don't take those risks, which
Yeah, I think that's the big thing at the moment is just there's no real
yeah,
true creatives. It seems very focus grouped, as I've mentioned. It's all what's popular at the moment, or let's do this, or let's put our messages into it from this, and it never really comes across to me that someone woke up one day with an inspiring idea for a story they truly wanted to tell. You know what I mean? It doesn't come across to me that there's that level of passion anymore.
yeah, it's kind of like what they did with Star Wars, where one of the things I think they even said was because I think didn't George Lucas when they bought it from him, George Lucas came to him the idea of this is what I have the idea for the sequels, and they basically turned around and said, yeah, but we want a movie for the fans. Is essentially what they said, and it's basically Disney going, yeah, but that's not going to be popular, you know. Whereas
There
the
was a
thing
lot
with
of
like Star
prequel
Wars,
hate at the time, though,
yeah,
and we forget
exactly,
that there was a huge amount of prequel hate, and I think
yeah,
by going and saying, "Oh, look, we've got the old cast back. You remember the Millennium Falcon? You remember this, and all the member berries, all the things." It was, "Oh, you're in
yeah,
safe hands because this is what you remember. This is the good Star Wars that you like." But what people didn't see at the time, and thankfully people are seeing now, that was all a veneer. That was all a facade. You look into it, the writing's terrible, the characterization's terrible, everything about it is terrible. People were fooled. People were hoodwinked by the shiny key jangling things, and that's all it is
that's
now.
why but Force Awakens was New Hope again because they went, well, New Hope was good, let's do it again.
Yeah,
That's why they did it. So it's all one of those easy kind of things, which is the way Disney's kind of gone. This is easy. That's why they're doing all the live action remakes because they went, oh, that was popular. Let's do it again. How do we do it again without just copying the same thing, make it live action? It's do it again, and it just is crap.
and look at the
But
comparison, right? A New Hope
yeah,
was made by a visionary, by someone who had an idea, who had a spark of an idea, and
yeah,
fought tooth and nail to get it made on location, over budget, everything like that. And it changed the world. It changed, you know, pop culture forever. And
I
then you have
do.
Force Awakens. It's like, right, that's the blueprint. Let's just try and do that, but with more CGI.
I do think one of the things. I mean, I don't know how much this makes sense, but I think obviously those kind of things. That's what makes money. Risks is what makes money. When you think about even bands, like, I know that we've always had stages like pop punk was. There was like a good 10 years. Pop punk was a thing. There was a good 10 years. Hair metal was a thing.
Mm.
But like for instance, like Motley Crue was one of the first like hair metal bands. Now they were big because they took a risk. They did this. Then it was oversaturated, and then Nirvana went completely different, and then that was the big thing. It's all differences. Whereas now I think people are scared to take that risk.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
they
that
are.
kind of, but we want to make money. And the issue I think is, like I said, I don't know if this is particularly the reason, but I do think more as we go on in companies and in the years and everything, people they are just greedy with money, and they go, well, that makes money, we want it, rather than let's make a story. Ah, shit, we lost a bit of money. Well, fuck it, let's go again. It's now just that makes money, we want money.
Mm.
And so many companies are like that, and it ruins a lot of things. But speaking of risks, actually, is this the first movie we see blood in? The first Disney movie?
No, that's a good question.
Because when the bear gets shot, you do see a wound. Blood doesn't maybe spray everywhere, but you do
Hmm,
see like a blood, like you see the blood. Is this the first? Because I can't actually remember.
that's a really good question. Because there's one that's in my mind, but that's Beauty and the Beast, and obviously that's later down the line. Um, I know you see it in Black Cauldron, which is obviously next time. Anything in Snow White? I don't think so.
See, that's the first one I thought of, but I don't think there
Let
is any
me.
actual
I'm gonna
blood in
see
it.
if I can Google that. First Disney film to show blood. You might be right.
Well, it's
Oh
not very
no,
confident.
Sleeping Beauty. When the prince
Yeah.
throws the sword into Maleficent Dragon, you see blood. Apparently,
Do you not see green blood?
no, it's red. I've got a picture up
I
now.
was
Yeah,
thinking when she pricks her finger, isn't there blood there?
not sure. It's got. If we're looking chronologically, one of the first cases of animated blood in a Disney project was the Winged Scourge, a PSA film. Is that what Maleficent Dragon's called? The Winged Scourge? I didn't know that. Um,
Hmm.
Oh, a PSA film. Sorry, no. The Winged Scourge, a PSA film concerning mosquitoes and the spreading of malaria. For a more dramatic example, fans only have to go back as far as Sleeping Beauty to get their first cinematic example. There we go.
Interesting. Okay, but it's the first one I thought of.
It's
To be fair, because when
noticeable
I
though,
saw it, I
isn't
went,
it? In that moment, yeah,
yeah,
it matches the tone of the film a lot.
yeah.
I just want to bring up some comments real quick because I kind of haven't gone to them, but I appreciate everyone keeping the conversation going. So yeah, just keep the comments coming in. Kurt says, I used to watch this film at my grandma's. She had this and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I later took her copies home when she got rid of her VHS collection. That's really cool. Those are two intense watches. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and this one. I think they actually go hand in hand pretty well, to be honest. He says, I think they made the wrong choice keeping Chief alive. It would have made more sense for Copy to take revenge if his father figure died. Yeah, I agree with that too. He says, I only think I sat through Bongo once. I always fast forwarded the tape to the second story, even in my teen years. Oh, he's talking about Fun and Fancy Free. Yeah, I mean, the main one on the cover, Mickey Mouse as well, Goofy, and uh, what, Jack and the Beanstalk. Christ, I couldn't remember what it was called. That is your main scene from that film, I agree, yeah. We enjoyed that film, though, going back to it, I think, didn't we? Fun and Fancy
Final
Free.
Fantasy 3 was good.
You really like that one. Kurt the Gamer
It was a
says,
good one.
Fox and the Hound was one of the Disney book and cassette tape read-alongs I had as a kid. Oh my god, I remember those. Yes. So I already knew about the bear before seeing the movie. Oh, that takes me back. I'm going to have to see if I can find those. I think they're probably up in the loft. I had a few of those. I know I had Aladdin, and I know I had Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't know if I had any more. Those were the main two. They were in like these big square cassette boxes. And I think it might have just been the one tape, but then it was like, when you hear this noise, turn the page. Bring. And it was like, and then it'd read it out to you, and you get like the sound effects and like voices from the movie. That was really cool. Yeah, no, I had a few of those. I didn't know they did a Fox and the Hound one though. That's news to me. Um, Kurt the Gamer says the ending of The Land Before Time was restructured as well. Originally, Littlefoot found the Great Valley without his friends and went back to find them, and then the Sharptooth fight happened. Yeah, they completely moved it all around.
Speaking
I
of,
think it's better the way they restructured it, because you have that emotional high of finding the Great Valley, and then you have an intense action scene, and then you have another, we're at the Great Valley. So I think saving that until the very end made a lot
they
more sense.
there was more than one Land Before Time as well, wasn't there?
There are a lot of them.
And they,
I don't know if it's true. I thought they were remaking it with CGI, and it looks
well,
awful.
yeah, but they
Um,
restructured Land Before Time as well because they recast Ducky, didn't they? So I think this is the most Ducky.
Most times we've referenced that in one video. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious as to how many they've done now. A list of the 14 films in the series. The last one they made was in 2016, called Journey of the Brave.
I've not. I think I've only seen the first one. But Mickey Rooney's in this as well. He's a short man.
Mickey Rooney's in there. Kurt Russell's in there as well as Copper. I always keep forgetting that. Apparently recorded all of his lines in 2 days, I believe. I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, so I was talking about like the Don Bluth and everything earlier. He had a big falling out with Reitherman, and he felt he was very out of touch, and they thought he was very stern and wasn't really listening to creative input. So he animated his sequence of the cow, as I mentioned earlier, Abigail, and then he took him and his team of animators, and they resigned. They basically walked out, and didn't want credit on this film. So they are not credited on this film at all, despite working on it, which is pretty interesting.
How come? Grandpa Joe is called Harold Albertson. How come he's called Jack Albertson?
Say that again.
He's called Jack Albertson, but his real name's actually Harold.
Well, actors change their names all the time, don't they?
Yeah, but why? Where's the relation like between like Jack and Harold?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering where the relationship is like between them because it's just weird to me. I just don't know.
Sorry, the Kurt Russell thing. I don't know if it was necessarily 2 days. It said he completed all of his dialogue in 2 recording sessions, so that could be anything. Let's talk about the music real quick. Only a few songs in this film. There's about like 5 songs total, one of which is like a spoken poem and chorus. I guess if I was going to pick a favourite, Best of Friends is the one that I remember the most. That's, with Todd and Copper playing together. When you're the best of friends. Da, da, da,
Can I be really weird on my choice?
Okay.
My choice is the beginning when there's no music. Only because... Not because the music's bad, but I love the fact that it's nothing. It really sets the tone. Like, it's a weird choice to say my favourite piece of music is the bit where there's none, but it's because there's supposed to be music at the beginning of these movies, and there just isn't anything, and I think it sets the tone so well. Like, that is just because it comes in and it just feels dark and kind of a bit like... almost kind of eerie and kind of like, where's this going? Like, you know what I mean? It's not that whole fun and fancy, like, yay, Disney, yay, colours, woo. Like, it's just a kind of like, okay, it's a bit dark, it's a bit, it's not a colourful movie, and, where's this going? What's this going to be? So I want to choose that just because I think that has the biggest impact for me.
I think the score's tremendous to this film. I really do. Buddy Baker was the composer for it. And yeah, I think the orchestral score stuff, or lack of music and sort of like weird ambient noises that get played, really, really worked to the film's advantage, definitely. If I was going to pick one of the sing-songy ones, it would probably be Best of Friends. That's sort of like the main one to me. But I think beyond that, like the actual sing-songs in this film aren't that remarkable. They're just kind of in there because they're in. In terms of the legacy of this film, though, there was, like many Disney films at the time, mid-2000s, there was a direct-to-video sequel, or direct-to-DVD, sorry, by that point, which was released on December the 12th, 2006. Fox and the Hound 2, which served as an intermediate, served as a midquel, when Todd and Copper were very, very young together, which I haven't seen.
I didn't actually know that existed until today.
I don't know what the plot is for it. There probably isn't much of one. The film takes place during the youth of Todd and Copper. Oh no. The plot of The Fox and the Hound 2 involves Copper being tempted to join a band of singing stray dogs called the Singing Strays, thus threatening his friendship with Todd. That sounds fucking awful. But
Wow.
Patrick Swayze was one of the voices in his only voice role. Played one of the characters in there. So there you go. If you're a Patrick Swayze fan, I guess check it out. Let's just go back to a few more comments real quick. Just going to your point about dark Disney films. Kurt the Gamer says Disney's A Christmas Carol from 2009. I think that's the motion captured one with Jim Carrey, if I remember rightly. He says that was pretty dark. I don't know about as dark as Hunchback though. I think we were probably referring to the main classics line, weren't we, rather than other Disney films. But I haven't seen that one, so maybe so.
What did it was John Lasseter. What's his name? Lasseter. Yeah, Lasseter. Because he's the animator, isn't he? Was this his first role? Like his first thing?
I'm not sure if he worked on. He was probably within the studio, like in the hiring process. Yeah, but I don't know if this was his first one.
Yeah, because he basically became very Pixar, didn't he? Because he directed obviously Toy Story and Bug's Life, and obviously Toy Story 2, and then he was involved heavily with like Finding Nemo and stuff. So he kind of tangented, that's the word, onto Pixar.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. Didn't he get fired or he stepped down? I think quite recently. In wake of like the whole Me Too movement thing. Yeah. So sort of like back end of 2017. He took a 6-month sabbatical for missteps apparently in his behaviour with employees. And apparently there was a lot of sort of like alleged sexual misconduct towards employees.
What, like Jimmy Savile and?
I don't know if it was, no, probably not to that level, but just probably a bit dodgy, like hiring process. I don't know, but yeah, he announced in 2018 that he was leaving the company.
Yeah, I just looked at it now. So. I was looking, and director, and it says Toy Story 4 removed. So I mean, he didn't direct Toy Story 3, but I don't know. I think he went to direct Toy Story 4 and then he got removed. I don't know.
I think he's still involved with stuff though, because it says following his departure from Disney and Pixar, he was hired by Skydance to run the animation division. So he's still working. He's still working.
Well, he's got enough money. He doesn't need to. And by the looks of him, he eats enough as well.
Yeah, I know, right? He's a big guy. Kurt the Gamer says, oh, this was talking about the blood in a Disney film. He says, there's no blood when Aurora pricks her finger. It cuts away right as she touches the spindle. But there is blood when Maleficent dies, yeah. Kurt the Gamer says, the read-along version has the Hunting Man song on it, and it has an extra verse that didn't make it into the movie. Oh, no way. That's cool. Actually, no, I quite like that song as well, when Amos is sort of driving back and he's singing that little ditty thing. I think that was cool. Kurt the Gamer says, I remember being confused when I saw the trailer for that back in the day, how a sequel could have them be kids again. Same with Bambi and Tarzan. Oh my god, yeah, no, I forgot they did a Bambi 2. God damn it. Is nothing sacred anymore. Jesus Christ.
They did that with Hercules was a was it Hercules? Or no, Hercules did a TV show, wasn't it? Yeah, that was it. It was the TV series as a mid-equal, which was so yeah, they do that. Yeah, they do that. To be fair, Hercules is warranted because they do the mid-equal, you know, in the whole when he's growing up and they're singing and they're doing the whole where he's training. The mid-equal is supposed to be during that period, which you know, that's very warranted. That didn't feel forced to make money.
I need to go back to that. I don't remember that all that much. I definitely watch bits of it, but yeah. Anyway, we're coming up to an hour. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say. I think the biggest takeaway with this one was that just the change up at the studio, seeing these new household names that will become very prevalent in a couple of Disney films' time once we hit the Disney Renaissance, which we're not that far from. The next string of Disney films, we are good for like the next few months. Oh, Dale's just disappeared. He will be back shortly. I will re-add him onto the stream as soon as he's back. Kurt the Gamer says there was a Hercules mid-call movie that was a compilation of 3 of the TV episodes. I didn't know there was a movie for that. I know there was the show. I think I watched a couple of episodes from it, but I don't really remember them particularly vividly. Um, yeah. There was I know Aladdin was a sequel one, I guess, wasn't it? That was after the movie. What are the midquels of the done? Yeah, Tarzan. You've mentioned that already. I can bring Dale back in. There we go. Yeah, I was just trying to think of some of the other mid-core things they've done. So Bambi, Tarzan, Fox and the Hound. Oh, Beauty and the Beast. You had Enchanted Christmas and the
that
third
worked
one.
very well.
Yeah.
Probably
Oh,
one of the better
Hercules
Disney
crossed over
sequels.
with Aladdin too. Apparently. Well, there is the moment actually in Aladdin during the A Whole New World sequence with the magic carpet, and they do fly through Greece, and you do see the similar kind of temples and the statues.
Remember when everything in Disney crossed over? So I'm not talking about Kingdom Hearts, but when it was Lilo and Stitch, the series where they got like Recess characters went into it, or Kim Possible,
Oh,
or
did they? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
do you remember that?
No, no, no.
So they had it was when they did the Lilo and Stitch series. I can't remember how many they did and what ones they were, but there was like an episode where all the dudes from Recess were in it, and then there was another episode where Kim Possible and a couple other people were in it. Then there was quite a few that they did with loads of other Disney characters came into it for an episode. It was that was a period where they crossed over everything into Lilo and Stitch. It was quite cool to be fair.
Huh. No, I didn't know that.
But
No, I never
but
knew that was a thing.
Stitch also did that in the trailers. Remember when they were doing Lilo and Stitch and all the little teasers where they had like Aladdin, and they were on the magic carpet, and suddenly Stitch was on it.
I remember the poster. Didn't the poster? Wasn't he like surrounded by other Disney characters?
Yeah, but they also did little trailers where there'd be like the whole new world, they'd be singing, and suddenly Stitch would appear, and they go, "Hey, what you doing?"
Oh, I
It was just
vaguely remember that. Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
have to
there
go
was
back and watch through some of those. Yeah, I mean,
yeah
Lilo and
that
Stitch was huge with like all the sequels and the shows and the spin-offs that they did of it.
that'll be a very good one to get to, Lilo and
Yeah,
Stitch.
I like that one. I like that one. It's a
But
fun one.
the thing that I'm hit with as well is what's it called? So you know how obviously they come from different worlds. Like Fox, a dog, very very different worlds. But obviously there's an unlikely friendship that obviously gets taken away. It's kind of like Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth come from very different worlds. They're very different people in a lot of ways, and there's this unlikely friendship that bonds, and they become huge, and then suddenly it's all taken away. And it's just yeah, it's very similar. I think it's very similar.
Yes, that might be my favourite one yet. That was a good one. I love that. Right at the end, you snuck it in there. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Just a few more comments then from Kurt the Gamer, and I think we'll round off and we'll announce next week's one. He says, just so at least at one point, it may have been retconned because Disney doesn't put much stock in their old shows. Aladdin and Hercules were in the same continuity. That's fun to think about because those are probably two of my favourite, certainly growing up and even now, like my favourite Disney classics. He says, my VHS of Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh had Stitch invading the dance scene from The Beauty and the Beast in a trailer, and Belle told him, get your own movie. I'm going to have to see if I can find like a compilation of those.
This is what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember it now.
That's cool though. That's cool. Oh, that's good marketing though, I suppose. It's something new, some like troublemakers on the way. And then I guess the film where they bring all the characters in would probably be on that scale at least would probably be Ralph Breaks
Wreck-It
the
Ralph
Internet,
2.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Although
seeing like Iron Man and stormtroopers and shit in a Disney film. It felt like, look at all the shit you can watch on Disney Plus. It felt like an advert for Disney Plus.
Yeah, like Space Jam 2.
Yes, exactly like that. Yeah, that was a HBO Max advert, wasn't it? Look at everything you can watch on our streaming platform.
Everyone even said that, didn't they? That was one of the criticisms.
Yeah. Well, what I hated, this is jumping way ahead to Wreck-It Ralph 2 because I fucking hate that movie. But when you have all the Disney princesses in there and they've all been like fresh coat of paint with CGI and new voices and proper like modern, like I don't need no man kind of personality on all of these Disney princesses. I'm like, fuck you with your modern sensibility. Modern LA fucking middle-aged writers going back to their box of wines at night and complaining about men and being single. Those were that felt like the writing quality for those Disney princesses there, and it really annoyed me because you have those Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, cornerstone Disney movies, that Cinderella, Little Mermaid, really important Disney films with like a reverence and a tradition behind them, and you just basically turn them into total thots in that movie. I'm like, fuck you. Sorry, random tangent, but yeah, again, modern sensibilities, modern agendas creeping into Disney films when it really has no place. Kurt the Gamer says, I still have a lot of the old Disney VHS, including Little Mermaid with the controversial cover. I have exactly the same video as well. I thought it might be down there, but I think it might be downstairs. Yeah, with the palace, Triton's palace.
With the penis.
With the phallus. Triton's palace with the phallus on the front. Yeah, exactly. And then you've got the vicar who is marrying Vanessa and Prince Eric, and he's got a little chub on while he's doing it. That's also in the movie. There's a lot of penises in that movie.
Speaking of Little Mermaid, Ursula was meant to be Triton's sister, wasn't she?
I actually don't know. Don't know about that.
Yeah, so it's one of the deleted scenes. I think it's on the DVD, but you can definitely watch it on YouTube. There's a deleted scene. It's one of those. It's like a storyboard. You see, it's not like fully done, but you can see the storyboards of it. It's put together. Ursula was originally meant to be his sister, and there was kind of things going. I can't remember how it played out exactly, but yeah, she was originally meant to be his sister, which I was so happy they took away, because I hate when everything's connected, because I just hate it. Which is weird because Kingdom Hearts is like my favorite game series, and everything's always connected, but I just hate that, when things are unnecessarily connected, where it's like, oh, this is my brother. It's like, why?
It
like
would definitely have made the final fight scene between the two of them have an entirely different dynamic. But I think probably the only holdover you have from that idea is where Ursula said, like, years ago we used to have fantastic feasts when I lived in the palace.
But it's pointless. It's kind of like, what I mean? Not everything needs to have a connection. Things can just happen. It's like Halloween, like my favorite horror movie franchise. But like the first one's great. The second one, it's a good movie. But when they come up with this whole like, oh, Michael Myers is his sister, she's Michael Myers' sister. It's like, why was that needed? And
they got rid of that a few times, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They got rid of it. Then they brought it back. And then they did make fun of it in the 2018 one, where they went, oh, wasn't he her brother? It's like, oh, that's just some shit the media made up. And I was like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's bollocks. But yeah, I just don't like that shit. But yeah, that was a thing in Little Mermaid.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the pronunciation on this actually. I want to say Cecilia. Cecilia. Yeah, Ursula was written. I didn't know this. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Ursula was written as Triton's sister, but they cut it out because it didn't make sense, because Triton is a merman and Ursula is a Cecilia. Part human, part octopus.
You know what? If that was made today, some executive would be like, "Wow, why can't they be? Just because she's that doesn't mean she can't be related." That's what someone would say.
No, it was in the live action version of The Little Mermaid. I couldn't fucking believe this. It's hilarious. So you've got Javier Bardem is Ariel's father, and you're like, okay. But then you know how she's got the 7 sisters? They're all different nationalities. You've got like a Chinese mermaid, and you've got like a Native American mermaid, and you've got a Spanish mermaid. You get all of them from all corners of the globe. I'm like, wow, Triton puts it about. Fuck me.
I find it so weird that also because Ursula's a black woman. You know what I mean? She is a cliche, big black woman. That's Ursula. Why in the? Do you get what I mean though? She's
no,
well, you can see
no,
it.
She wasn't. No. She was based off a drag artist.
Yeah, but if anyone, okay, right. So basically, the remake, obviously, you've got Ariel's a black girl. If anyone's going to be a big black woman, I'd see it as Ursula. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But for some reason, she's played by the white girl. Ariel's the black one. It didn't make sense to me. It was really weird. But this is a thing that I will say. Have you noticed that they're doing all this like race change stuff? But the evil people are always white. Yeah. They don't ever change them to black, do they? It's really weird.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. And it's like, interesting. Did it the other way around? How many times would they scream racism?
I'm surprised they didn't make Ursula a white man, because we're all part of the problem.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Kurt says he thinks that Ursula is Triton's sister in the remake. So they
Well,
had that thought back in the day in the animated one, and they went, "No, we're not going to do that because it doesn't make any sense."
and they went, fuck
And
it.
then modern Disney went, "Fuck it, let's just do it."
It's like they're doing it to ruin this, to ruin the.
It's
Imagine
like they
what this.
just, it's, you know what, and this is really depressing to say, and I keep saying it, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to do this retrospective. I wanted to do this retrospective for so long, and I actually think now was the right time because we are seeing Disney fucking dying. The company is just like digging its own grave, and you know what? I've hit the point now where they've had such a string of missteps and the way that they talk about the fans and the way that they say you don't like this film because you're a racist or you're a misogynist and things like that, how they're actively like hateful towards the audience, and the audience is listening now. They're onto them. They know exactly what the agenda is. They know exactly what's up. They know exactly how they're crafting their movies now and why they're doing it, and we're seeing it with dislike ratios on trailers that are coming out, especially on their Star Wars content. It's actually kind of cathartic now to see Disney lose so many hundreds of millions and go
That's
under.
why I'm. That's why I'm worried about the future of Kingdom Hearts because, you know, I think Kingdom Hearts is quite. You know, Disney's quite, as much as they own quite a big chunk, they're quite lenient in what, like they're quite Square Enix, do what you want kind of thing. They are quite like that, which is good. But the thing is, the more modern shit that they use, Disney are going to step in, like you know, obviously I'm not going to. I know you haven't played three, but like stuff with Frozen, you see a lot of things that you just think, you know what, Disney obviously stepped in and said we need this. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like Let It Go is used in it, and Disney 100% definitely when we need Let It Go, we need to put it in. It's our biggest song.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? They definitely did that, and obviously Square Enix aren't going to say no because the way they did it, it was definitely just to show off Unreal Engine. It was to show off the graphics, to show off that, which is cool. It looks good. But it's one of those things where the more modern it gets, Disney's are going to go, we need that, we need that, we need that. And now that they're coming away from, they've used all the older movies, they're going to have to use newer movies. So I am a bit worried about the future of the
Pixar
series.
as
But
well. We started to see that creep in with
yeah,
Kingdom Hearts 3.
it's yeah. So I am worried about. But the thing is, the one thing again about Star Wars is, which you'll probably notice, is all these games and spin-offs and stuff. Which Star Wars has just, it's not Star Wars anymore. It's a brand. Like it's all becoming a copy and paste kind of like, you know, the games could be anything, but they've just plastered, instead of, you know, fucking random soldiers, it's just, oh, these are stormtroopers, let's make it Star Wars, let's earn an extra 40 million and make them stormtroopers. If they
Mm.
were random soldiers, it wouldn't earn any money. That's what it's become. Like, what is, isn't there, like, was it Star Wars Outlaws that's coming out?
Yeah, it's got massively like dislikes already. People
Yeah,
people
I
have
haven't.
wised up to it now. You've got the Star Wars Acolyte show that's coming out on Disney Plus in like a month's time. We've had one trailer for it. It looks like absolute dog shit. I will be doing reviews for that, by the way, on the channel.
I
In case you're wondering, I will be doing
I
weekly reviews on
haven't
that.
watched much about Star Wars Outlaws because I've lost interest in a lot of anything new with Star Wars. I've really
Same,
lost interest, but
same.
but I haven't watched much on it. But I did see a couple of things. It was just because it was promoted on PlayStation today of one of the pre-orders, so I just had a quick look, and it looked very. I haven't looked too much into it. I don't know if it looks good or anything yet, but it looked very like. So this could be, yeah. I'm trying to think, like, you know, Fallout or Outer Worlds or something. It could literally be that, except they've slapped stormtroopers helmets onto the fucking soldiers. That's what it looks like to me, and it just shows that it's like they've just done that so they can make more money. Like
Yeah.
it's not Star Wars.
It is. As I say, it's cathartic to see people finally wising up and Disney losing millions. They took a massive hit on a lot of their big budget films last year. Indiana Jones, for example, was a massive loss. Certainly, like the Lucasfilm stuff, and there is that part that is sad because it's like you're bastardizing and you're ruining a legacy built by, you know, actual visionaries and people, you know, who were actually talented and had a story to tell and had a passion for telling that story and had the know-how of how to tell that story, and you're absolutely destroying that. But we've had such a string of losses recently that I'm like, let it go under. Now it never will, because Disney are that kind of name. The company ain't going anywhere. Actually, coming up to the one that we're going to talk about next week, Disney were in a very real situation where the company could go under. And obviously, like the earlier ones as well, when the World War was happening and they were losing money and the films weren't making money, it could have gone the same way. Disney ain't going anywhere anytime soon. You know, you've got the theme parks, you've got everything like that. Their movies are losing money, yes. They might cut back on certain releases, that we might see more sequels and household names that they know are going to sell. Case in point, we're going to see that with Frozen 3. We're going to see that with Zootopia 2. We've got Moana 2 this year, which is probably going to be a massive fucking train wreck, because that was meant to be a Disney Plus show, which they've now repurposed and repackaged into a movie. So I'm not sure how that's going to go, but that's just what we're going to get.
Isn't it funny, though, that maybe not Disney, but like George Lucas, for instance, can, because obviously he sold Star Wars them, can literally, there'll be new shit released and he can kind of look at that and go, do you know what? Star Wars movies can be dog shit and I can still make millions. Isn't it kind of funny that you can kind of look at it like that, go, I can still make money off absolute crap kind of thing? Like,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't think he cares though. I really don't think he cares.
No,
I think
but
he was
it's that kind of,
yeah.
It's that kind of making something though, and making it so good that now it's like it can just be absolute crap, but you'll still make loads of money.
Yeah.
It's like, I think one of my mates said it about David Lee Roth released a song, and I showed it to him, and he went, "Isn't it funny that you can actually just be that level of famous that you can just release absolute dog shit and everyone will listen to it anyway?"
Yeah.
Like it's just kind of funny.
I think George Lucas was probably upset initially, thinking that they were going to go with his idea of his story outline for episode 7, and when that didn't go ahead, he probably just became really despondent with it, like the rest of us, and was just
he
like,
went, "I'm done with it now."
He's still making money off it. He ain't going to be making any more movies. He's on his nest egg. He's cut a nice sweet. Yeah, he's probably cut a nice sweet percentage deal out of it on the fine dotted line. And even recently, he backed Bob Iger, who was partly responsible for absolutely tanking his baby, essentially, Star Wars, and he backed him, which was totally a financial decision. And some people have said that it didn't even sound like George Lucas's words. Maybe someone put him up to it or something like that. I don't know, but there was all these people saying like, oh, what if Disney keeps losing on Star Wars? Will they eventually sell it back to George Lucas and he can come back and save the day and make his films? It ain't gonna happen, and that was spelt out when he backed Bob Iger during that investment meeting, I think it was, or shareholders meeting, or whatever it was. Kurt the Gamer says Disney has been downhill for years. We didn't get a good digital version of Cinderella until last year. All DVD and Blu-ray releases had so much detail scrubbed from the image. We talked about that, yeah, when we did our review for it. It's an absolute travesty, and when you watch the before and after, it's absolutely night and day what they're doing to some of those old classics. So hopefully, you said you've got a good digital version of it now, so there is one that's available to watch. But I mean, I was watching the one on DVD, and we even said that this doesn't feel how we remembered it looking, and that's exactly the reason why. We've got Carl as well. Carl in the comments. Good to see you, man. Hope you're
with
doing
a K.
good.
C.
Carl
C.
with the C. Long time viewer on the channel. Good to see you again, man. He says, I don't even recognize what Star Wars has become anymore. Sadly, just cancelled my Disney Plus. Well, I congratulate you, man. Think with your wallet. That is going to be the way to hurt a company like this. It's complete apathy, which I feel like people have reached now with Star Wars. I think, like die-hard Star Wars fans are just sort of, I'm over it. I'm done. The damage has been done. I don't care. Did I enjoy Andor? Yeah, sure. I enjoyed Andor. It was incredibly well written. It was well directed. The set pieces were wonderful. And I will check out Andor Series 2. But I can't say I'm like head over heels, like out of my mind excited for Star Wars. And if you asked me, back in 2015, whenever it was, I was out of my mind for more Star Wars. I was like, yeah, let them keep cranking it out. And that very quickly went away after I saw The Force Awakens, for sure.
And this is why I'm so happy there's no Bugs Life 2.
Yeah. And it's such a shame because it's, Disney used to be such a household name of quality, the hallmark of quality, especially in the animated film division. It was like, well, how do you get better than Disney? They're absolute titans in the field. Now I just see Disney's name on something like Disney are remaking this, or Disney have bought the rights to this. I'm like, oh, fuck. How are they going to fuck it up now? That's what runs through my mind every single time.
Wonder what Walt Disney would say.
I think he would have a lot of things to say. But that's the
He
fucking sad
he
thing, man.
would
It's like,
probably
he blood, sweat, and tears building this company out of nothing. This is
he
its
would
fate.
probably say Hitler should have won. Is probably what he would have said. Like, it's Walt Disney.
I
He
mean, yeah,
probably
I was
would
going
have
to
said
say,
that.
he probably would have said that anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but yeah, Fox and the Hound. This is why we're doing this retrospective. I've always wanted to talk about these films. I'm so grateful that you're joining me on this quest as we keep going through them. Also, diehard Disney fan. It's great having a conversation with you every week about these. And we're going to have a very special one lined up for you next week. So he's actually, and for once, he's actually not in the comments this time. SeaWorld Man, where are you at, man? SeaWorld Man was saying that he'd love to see another video in this Disney retrospective of us in person again, in the same room together, talking about the film like we did for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And that's exactly what we're going to do next week. So next week, we are at number 25, The Black Cauldron, one of my favourite ones, one of the most terrifying ones. And you actually mentioned this to me a couple of weeks ago. You were like, when are we getting to Black Cauldron? And I told you, and you said, right,
Yeah,
I'm going to come to
one of
you for
my
that.
favourite ones
We're going
as
to review
well.
that together.
Yeah, this is one of my favourites. It's one of the. I think it is one of the best. It stands out so well. It's so cool. It's so Dungeons and Dragons. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of those, it feels quite, yeah, like, Dungeons and Dragons, something that's it's mystical, it's fun, it's a bit like a game in a way where you think, oh, you're fighting the warrior, the kind of, it's just really cool. And it's great. It's the perfect way, I think, to do a family-friendly, creepy kind of thing.
And this gets creepy. This
it's kind of like,
got so creepy, in fact, they had to cut huge amounts of the ending out, which we'll talk about next week.
yeah,
But, even
it's kind
just
of
seeing
like
that case, like the greed. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know how Sword in the Stone is not creepy, but it could be. Like,
Yeah.
it had the potential to be, but it went family friendly. It's like this one went, okay, let's do the other thing. Let's go creepy. It's wicked. I love it. And one of my favourite villains.
I love this stuff, sword and sorcery. Tolkien growing up, loved it. You had stuff like Willow and all of the fantasy epics and stuff like that, right? I loved it.
It's
I
the
loved
one
it.
world I want in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Well, that's next week, everyone. That's going to be 8 p.m, so it's going to be exactly the same time. We might go a little bit over. It might be more like 8:15. But we're going to say 8 o'clock, okay? Black Cauldron, don't miss it. It's going to be a really fun one to talk about. And, in fact, the next... probably over the next 10 Disney films are going to be immense to talk about. We're getting ever so close to that Disney Renaissance. Every single week goes by. We're getting closer. We're only a few weeks away from it.
What's after Cauldron?
After Black Cauldron, we've got Basil the Great Mouse Detective, which is also one of my favourites. Oliver and Company, and then boom, we're at Little Mermaid. And then we're hitting the Disney Renaissance. Carl Roberts says, I know it's not film related, but have you noticed how expensive gigs are getting? Pearl Jam were charging 160. Okay, we're going to go off on a fucking tangent for like the next 10 minutes. Yes, what the fuck is up with that? We've had this conversation multiple times, but gig tickets, I say back in the day, I'm talking like a matter of years ago, pre-COVID, I guess, would probably set you back, depending on how big the band were. What would you say, between 60 and 85 quid? Was that a fair sum, would you say, somewhere in between that?
Motley Crue's final show, final tour, they did over here, 45 quid.
Yep.
Now it's, 120? I mean, I know it's a stadium. I know it's a bit bigger, but 120 quid. We saw them with Def Leppard and Steel Panther back in fucking many years ago. That was 40 quid?
Yeah.
Now, with Def Leppard, 150.
I think when I got 2 Def Leppard tickets and I gave you one for your birthday, I think that was like 60 quid. That's what you expect. I think Black Sabbath, I think I probably spent when Ozzy was going to do his solo tour, which obviously was delayed
that
for
was
about
like 80.
5 years. That was about 80. Once you've done all the booking fees, probably
Sabbath,
about 85
I think,
or something
was 80.
like that. So it was up there, and that was the most that I'd probably be willing to spend. Now it's crazy. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of gigs booked for the rest of the year, but your set minimum now is probably 120. That's like the bare minimum.
Said, how much did Kiss cost you?
Oh God. Well, even looking at this now, this is chump change. But I upgraded to Golden Circle for Kiss, and they were like 134. I think.
How much
Now,
was it before?
110, I think it was.
When I saw Kiss, it was 50 quid, and I was right at the front.
And that was only a few years before I went to see them,
Yeah.
right? So it wasn't even that much. But other ones that I've booked for this year, for example, I'm off to see Heart. 120 quid flat out fee for the ticket. Then you've got all your booking fees, and do you want to insure this ticket? Probably about 132 quid was at the end of that. I've got tickets to go and see Journey. Fourth row from the front, seated gig, 150 quid. This is bare minimum, folks. Like, this is... And I went to see Journey. It's probably a fair few years ago now, but the point still stands. And I think I went to see them with Whitesnake and Thunder, and it was probably like 65 quid, 70 quid a ticket. And that was for three bands.
Think about it. The Scorpions, not that bad though, to be fair. They did all right, didn't they?
So, and that is the one that's clinched it for me. Scorpions, Love at First Sting tour, which I'd still love to get to see. I've never seen Scorpions, and I really want to. They were charging seated gig minimum £300, which is fucking insane to me. £300, and then you get on these ticket sites, and then they go up to 400 quid for a ticket, and I think they're all sold out now, so people have still paid it. But there has to come a point where you're like, nah, I'm not playing ball. I really want to see them, but I'm not paying that much. AC/DC or another one. I think flat out fee was 130, but they get on these ticket sites, they get on these bots to buy tickets, and then tickets are all out of sale, so you go on these other sites, these resale sites, and the value triples, 300, 400, whatever it happens to be. And yeah, I saw a lot of people on that Facebook post when Pearl Jam said we're going live. I think I didn't even see one comment saying, oh, I can't wait to see them. Every single comment I read and I scrolled down was, not paying that much, absolutely not worth it. Pearl Jam used to be a band for the people and would charge a really low fee so that everyone could get to see them. No way are they worth paying 160 quid for. And I think even now they've dropped the price. Actually, didn't Kiss do that now I think about it? Wasn't Kiss 160 and they dropped it to 130 because tickets weren't selling? They even had to, I think they had to cancel Plymouth, didn't they, Kiss, because they hadn't sold like anywhere near enough tickets. I think they just knocked it on the head.
Yeah. Remember when, like, in the 80s, they were like £8 a ticket?
Yeah.
Now, I know that was a long time ago, and I know wages were different, but inflation-wise, it's still a lot less.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, Carl, to your point, I have noticed how expensive gigs are getting. Yeah. Christ almighty, my wallet. But we've got some good gigs lined up this year, which we're going to get to. So, we'll keep going to them, but there has to be a limit.
Have we? There ain't many that I know of right now.
Well, you're potentially off to see one with me in June in London.
Yeah. So, well, we've got two that I can think of. Like, I mean, I'm going to see Mammoth. We're going to see Winger. Like, that's two, but I can't think of loads this year, is what I mean.
I mean, I've got like concerts lined up as well, like film music stuff. So, but this is like the first time I've ever had to put gigs into my calendar on my phone, and I've never had to do that just to keep track.
Do you know what? Actually, speaking of prices, this to gig tickets, this is one thing. So meet and greets and shit that people do, and they're like a grand. I don't know who the fuck pays a grand to meet a fucking artist, like anything like that. Like, I did look into it just because she's a goddess. I did have a look into how much do people pay to meet Ariana Grande. $2.5 grand. $2.5 grand. Like, I mean, if the idea was me and her alone in a room for half a night, that's fine. $2.5 grand otherwise, like, what? Anyway, the point I'm making is obviously people pay that £5, $2.5 grand, whatever it is. But I went to a Final Fantasy Orchestra thing, and there was a talk with Yoko Shimomura, who does the Kingdom Hearts music. There was a Q&A that I did with her. £10. £10. Wow. So speaking of prices, that was fucking reasonable. I saw that and I was like, yeah, all right. I'll go to a Q&A for a tenner. And it was great because there were people dressed as fucking Xemnas and fucking Sora and shit. And I was like, these are my people. It was.
I actually went to that Kingdom Hearts one in London, and looking back now, why didn't we go to that together? Why didn't we go to that?
Yeah, I think for some reason I swear you found out about it and I didn't know about it.
It
I
was really
can't
last
remember.
minute. It was like a random Facebook
Yeah,
post, and I thought, is this, you know how you get sort of like dodgy cookies that come up sometimes, and you're like, this
yeah.
probably looks a bit shit. But no, it was a legit thing. And now I'm worried that they're going to do a new one. It'll be music from Kingdom Hearts 3, and I'll really want to go, but also I'll get something like massive spoilt for me if I go to it. So I've got to try and play them. I'm halfway through
Yeah.
I was going to say Chains of Olympus, that's God of War. Chain of Memories. I'm in
Yes.
Halloween Town at the moment. I'm halfway through it, so.
And you will actually. That's quite. Is that the second lot of worlds?
No, it's the last one of the first lot of worlds.
It's the second lot of worlds where there's a bit of a level spike, tiny bit.
I'm already feeling that. I've already had to
You
like
have
edit
to.
my decks,
You have to
so
really
I don't
level
get
up.
my
You
ass
just have
handed
to.
to me every single time.
You just have
The
to
boss in
grind the shit out of
Monstro,
it.
the one that throws the
The cage.
poison goo at you,
Yeah.
that almost kicked my ass.
There's a special card in that, isn't there? Way like a weird Mickey card you get, and I can't remember what it does.
Yeah, it makes the floor not toxic.
That's it.
Yeah.
The Ursula battle's fun though.
Not as terrifying for you as the.
No, no. That's a... We'll talk about that when we get to
We
Little
will
Mermaid. It
in a few
terrifies
movies'
me.
time. Anyway, guys, we'll round it off there. Kurt the Gamer says he's already looking forward to Basil the Great Mouse Detective, most underrated Disney movie. I would agree. And it's got the voice talents of Vincent Price. I'm really looking forward to that one. That's going to be in a couple of weeks' time. But next week, Black Cauldron. Be there. Lots to talk about. It's going to be really fun. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight and kept the conversation going. You guys are amazing.